7:28 coming up towards 7:29 in Trinidad and Tobago. We are in the second week of the new academic year. Lots of issues on the table, and let's get a perspective from the Sister Isle of Tobago with the Tobago officer for the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. He is Braden Roberts. We'll discuss the reopening of school, whatever challenges that there are so far, whatever concerns that there may be, and how those issues are being dealt with. Mr. Roberts, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning to you, Mr. Mohammed, and the TV6 team, and to the viewers and listeners.
Good to have you with us, Mr. Roberts. So, we entered the second week of the academic year. How have things been going so far in Tobago?
Well, unfortunately, we had the anxiety of schools not being ready, and we had that public debacle of the responses to the particular situation not being targeted to the issues, really. However, we have gone past that. We are unfortunately still at the position where schools are not ready. They have organized some of the contract work to continue on weekends in some cases and on evenings in some schools as well. I want to applaud the teachers though, because despite the discomfort, they are giving their best to ensure teaching and learning takes place. What we are not going to compromise on is health and safety issues, as that's not something I would ask anybody to compromise on. So those issues continue to be raised, and in instances where it's warranted, teachers would have issued a refusal to work.
And as far as the specific issues, are there any particular schools where there are ongoing issues which remain unresolved?
There are several schools, and I can raise Scarborough Secondary School to be at the highlight at this time. I visited this school on Saturday. Now, Scarborough Secondary School opened just yesterday. With the extent of the work that was done, well, it started pretty late and it was not able to be completed by the start. And it's still at a state where we don't have an idea when works would complete at Scarborough Secondary School. There's a rotation system for forms 2 and 3, as there's a particular block that is inaccessible. So Scarborough Secondary School will have some issues. They've had issues for years, and we have been discussing relocating the school, which has been a political. But there has been very little traction where the new building for Scarborough Secondary School is concerned. But the teachers have been out there yesterday. Unfortunately, some of the teachers report has to do some cleaning themselves to ready the classrooms for students. Being on the compound yesterday, there was a little bit of confusion with which classroom to go to, where some students will be asking which particular class, which classroom they will be using for a particular class. So, and that's just Scarborough Secondary School. We have Speyside Secondary, where they would have done some work on moving for the sixth form. It's not complete. Also, the toilets, they would have only had 2 boys' toilets with doors on it and 3 girls' toilets with doors on it. And that school, the cohort that they brought out was forms 1, 4, and 5, which would have been upwards of 200 plus students. So
Mr. Roberts, sorry to interrupt you, but hearing about things like toilet with no door and this window break and this thing and whatever, you have to ask yourself, what is going on here? I mean, is there a proper communication going on? Because we have central government, we have the Ministry of Education, you have the Division of Education. Is that about politics? Now that there's the PDP in charge in Tobago, are there proper lines of communication to facilitate all that needs to be done?
Right, so I would want to get to communication shortly, because there are a lot of things that is not happening where Ministry and the Division need to come together on. But in terms of school repairs, that is something that the Division is fully in control of. I believe that those who did not have a full appreciation for the amount of work that they needed to put in, and the time actually crept up on them. We have not had the repairs.
Again, forgive me for sounding rude, but how could the time creep up on you? You had 8 weeks. No, there's no surprise. It's not something that's like Diwali holiday or Eid holiday that you have to wait a few weeks to get the confirmation of the holiday. How do these things creep up on people?
Well, I don't even want to get back into the battle of speaking directly to the duties of the secretary, assistant secretary, and the administrator, because their response to me raising the issue was distasteful and awful. The issue is schools have not been repaired properly for years. Now, they would have run on the campaign that they're coming to address these issues. Now, in January, seeing the extent of the work that was needed, I submitted to them a spreadsheet of issues. In April, when they had the first phase of reopening, I visited schools. I submitted an 8-page document with issues and recommendations. None of these things they responded to, And we see where July, August, I am observing nothing happening. I've been trying to reach out to these persons, and then, as was expected, come September, school's not ready. So they would have done some the last 2 weeks of the vacation period to get a lot of the schools functional. There's still some work to be done in majority of the schools, but we are at the stage where teachers are trying their best to manage. The only thing we're not going to compromise on is health and safety.
I hear you on that. And in the time that we have available, and I know you said you wanted to address it with some more detail, this issue of the communication breakdown between the Ministry of Education and the Division of Education of the THA. Just elaborate on that for us, please.
All right, so not so much in terms of repairs. However, in terms of HR matters where our teachers are affected, a lot of the things that we're supposed to be doing in Tobago, it is still sent to the ministry for approval. And the breakdown is not now with PDP, the breakdown has been there for years. The ministry seems to have this standoffish approach where the division is concerned. They do very little in advance in Tobago matters. So, for example, a teacher gets married and wants to change her name. They send a request for a name change. That goes to ministry and takes years, 5 years, 6 years to come back to get to change your name. Now, these persons have business to conduct and would want the name change to come back. Now, God forbid, some teachers would fall ill. They may have extended leave to be classified. That takes 10 years. Yes, they are retiring with this outstanding approval to take place. Now, there is no communication of any satisfactory level between the ministry and the division. I went to the administrator and the SHRO asking for their contact information so that when I go to the ministry, I would supply them with that, get the ministry contact information and bring it back to the division, because there isn't a particular desk-to-desk communication where the ministry and the division is concerned. Now, I went to the ministry meeting and I was so disappointed. Raising the concern, the response was, the ministry, would have a meeting among themselves to decide if they want to have a meeting with the division to address communication issues. Now, these are things that we raise at the level of the CPU as well. However, the CPU usually address the issues, individual issues, and not so much the communication problem. So the minister and the secretary, they need to come together and address this issue. The permanent secretary and the chief administrator in Tobago, they need to come together and address this issue of communication. I do a lot of mediation, getting things from Tobago, having the communication ministry, getting things from ministry, having the communication with the division, and suffering in the middle.
And just finally, Mr. Roberts, I'm glad that I'm not really glad, because it's just frustrating to be hearing these things that seem so basic, but at least there's an opportunity to highlight them. But are you hopeful, sir, that the circumstances will improve? You could be said, look, Braden Roberts trying to embarrass me. Well, if you think it's taken 10 years, it will take 20 years now. I mean, the thing is that, are you hopeful, sir, that the situation can improve for the benefit of the teaching service and indeed for the better quality of service to the students and therefore the education sector? Are you actually hopeful at all?
Well, in the nature of my job, I have no option but to be hopeful. I have to see about the members' issues, and I must advocate at the level of the division and at the level of the ministry. I am not encouraged, though, seeing the responses thus far. I'm not seeing efforts by the secretary and the assistant secretary to reach out to the ministry to ask to solve it. I had the conversation with the chief administrator. I'm not seeing any efforts to resolve it. I went to the ministry. I'm not seeing any efforts to resolve it, but I have to continue advocating. I cannot lose hope. If I lose hope, there isn't any hope for our members. So I am always out here advocating for the members' matters to be addressed, and I must stay steadfast at that.
Well, I suppose the final message that you want to leave with us is that if you want to get married in Tobago and you're a teacher, keep your name, don't change it, because you might have grandchildren by the time the name is actually changed. But Mr. Roberts, we really appreciate you taking the time this morning from your obviously busy schedule to highlight these concerns. Some seem quite basic, but this is Trinidad and Tobago, and it just doesn't seem that we, in any way, shape, or form, serious about creating a better environment for all of us. But we thank you very much for your time this morning.
And thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Indeed. Braden Roberts, the Tobago officer with the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. So if you're a teacher in Tobago and you're getting married, forget about that idea about Mr. and Mrs. Just go with your own name because you'll just be wasting time. We'll be back right after this.